G'day, legends. Welcome to the off-season Chinwag with Celtic Down Under. I'm your host, Jared, and joining me tonight is Shane. How you doing, Shane?
Good, mate. Good. It's been a little while since I've been on in your esteemed company and you and the other fellas. So good to get back in the rhythm. As I was telling you off air, I had to work out how to connect everything up again so everyone could see my face and hear my voice. So that was a learning curve and exactly what preseason's all about, right?
Get some reps into the legs, get it all sorted and, try to keep some sort of match fitness up.
But all good. It's been a little while, a little bit of sabbatical from football, of course. So the A League and Scottish Prem seasons finished up around the same time. So been sort of into getting into a few other sports here, of course. But as I said, nice to be back with you. And how you been? Hope you've been well, mate.
Yeah, just been chipping away. Had a bit of a switch the brain off for a couple of weeks there with no football, which was actually quite interesting. Haven't done that in a while. So, yeah, it's getting back into it, trying to keep the pod going over the off-season when there's absolutely nothing happening on the transfer front. It's always a challenge. So come on, Celtic. As you can see by the episode title here, one for the Aussies, Tell Us We're Dreaming. It's the name of the episode. To play on the famous line from the movie The Castle. For those over in the UK who don't know, but yeah, it's Tell Us We're Dreaming. Where's these transfers? I want to wake up tomorrow and there'll be some like 4 transfers in, positions filled, and then I'll be pinching myself. Is it a dream or not? I don't believe it. So yeah, we want to we need to get things going really, but we'll talk about that later on. Oh, here we go. Michael, how are my upside down chums?
Hang on. Let me just turn my head.
Well done. Love how you do that. And then Andrew, Cowboys winter weather now. Absolutely, mate. It's a bit fresh down here, but yeah, it is how it is. So before we get into the Celtic talk, Shane, West Coast Eagles, Simo, what's going on?
Yeah, it was going to be my shout out at the end, to be honest. But yeah, look, time's come for a coaching replacement at the Eagles. So we're talking AFL footy. My beloved West Coast Eagles have made a move and removed senior coach Adam Simpson after 11 seasons in charge. It's unusual territory for me. If you're sort of an Eagles fan of my age bracket, you've only really known 2 coaches in your time, which is John Worsfold, who was there for 11 seasons, and now Adam Simpson. So we don't go through coaches very often. But yeah, look, unfortunately, the writing was on the wall for a little bit. Results over the past few seasons haven't been great, particularly in the last few weeks. Some really poor showings, and it was time for a change for all parties. So he's done an incredible job. Premiership, what are some of my most favourite AFL football memories that I will treasure have been under Simpson. So I wish him well, but looking forward to what the future holds.
As someone who doesn't really care much for the AFL, I will say Simo has done a great job at West Coast and he deserved better than the send-off he got. So that's just someone who has no stake in this at all. Yeah, that's why I brought it up, because I'm like, I just wanted to see how you're feeling because I thought it was rubbish.
Oh, look, I think the time was right, but the way it was handled could have been better. And I'm going to take a bit of a shot at the West Australian media, who got a clip in the press conference from him for some of their actions and then proceeded to put one of the worst front pages the next day out based on his sacking. And they need to have a good hard look at themselves, because some of the footy media in this country are a bit of a disgrace, let's be honest. So they could have held themselves a lot better, and they need to lift their game, because coaches and players will eventually get sick of it and not bother.
All I'm going to say is the clip that Simo gave him was reminiscent of Ange giving the clip to the Scottish media all the time. It was the comment that was, if you knew, you knew, and you pick up on it. If you didn't, you found it laughable. So, yeah, it was. I just love that sort of thing. So, yeah. Anyway, we're past the safe mark now. So if one of us drops a colourful word later on, Shane, we're good now, because I was going to. But yeah, let's bring up some comments. So what we're going to do later on the episode, we want to answer some of your questions. So if you've got any topics or anything we're talking about, you want to ask a question, put it in the comments. We'll do our best to get to it later on. So we'll start off here. Vinny is saying, G'day, boys. You boys have more activity than our transfer activity at the moment. Vinny, putting on this Celtic Down Under t-shirt here. T-shirt's available at CelticDownUnder.com. That's the plug, the shameless plug done. Putting on this t-shirt was more activity than is going on at Celtic. There you go. And then Robert Gibson, I transferred from the lounge room to the kitchen. Good man, Robert. Good man. Hail, Martin.
More transfer activity than Celtic.
I'm loving that one there. Chinwaggers, it's a nice one. Might have to keep the term over the season. And then Andrew saying, is there still hope for Kobayashi as a fullback? Shane, you wanted to talk about the Celtic 6, Queen's Park 4 game. So I'll bring up the starting lineup, and then I'll let you give us a spiel on the game. Oh, no, I've left the comment on the screen. Lovely. So starting lineup, Bain in goals, Awada, Welsh, Murray, Kobayashi at the back. So basically, for me, look at that, a defensive midfielder and 3 centre-backs. Bosun Lowell in the middle of the park along with O'Reilly and Home. So for me, it's good to see Lowell get a bit of a run, Home getting some game time as well. And then Yang and Mikey on the wing with Kyogo up front. The bench, you had Siegrist, Oluwayemi, Clark. So it was that 3 goalkeepers. O, Kwon, Frame, Agbear, Robertson, Dede. I always can never say that one right. Yuri or Ura, I don't know. Donovan, Hatton, Turley. So, Shane, what was your thoughts on the game and overall?
Yeah, it was an interesting game. Look, it's a preseason friendly. You don't really expect to, see anything, or see any world beaters out there or anything that's going to necessarily, say, well, that guy, he's absolutely on fire early. But what I look for in these preseason friendlies is players that are maybe on the fringe and seeing what they're actually showing and whether they're at the level. And then obviously, like Andrew was saying about Kobayashi, and seeing him playing a different role, whether he's suitable or not. He was. I'll talk about Kobayashi first because it seems to be what Andrew's sort of bringing to my attention at the moment. And look, it was interesting. I probably didn't see enough there in him to say that we'd persist with him in any capacity as a fullback instead of a centre half. He wasn't awful by any stretch. He was relatively solid. I thought he got beaten I think it was either their first or second goal. He got beaten far too easily down the right. Just looked like he didn't have his positioning and his body shape properly. I think that comes from maybe not playing in that position. But he was okay. He was getting forward a fair bit. He seemed to be inverting a little bit as well, which was quite interesting. You'd have Mikey out, sort of getting to the touchline, staying wide, and Kobayashi sort of cutting in. He actually gets an assist for a Kyogo's hat-trick goal, I think. So, look, overall, it was an interesting display. There wasn't anything that I saw that immediately sort of jumped out to me in terms of the way we were playing. I thought we were okay in patches, but and a couple of players like Kyogo looked fantastic. Even in that preseason friendly environment, he just looked so switched on, and it's setting a great example for the younger players and the Celtic B team players that were in the squad as well, which Brendan highlighted in his post-match press conference. And Matt O'Reilly looked pretty solid as well. But a couple of the B team kids are what I like the look of. Turley, who got his first goal in the Celtic first team, he looked pretty good. And I like the look of young Hatton on the left when he came on. He looks really promising, and just loved his movement and just loved his smarts about when to push and when to sort of hold up and play the ball back in. So, look, there are a few positives. I was probably a little bit disappointed in some of the fringe players, not maybe pushing themselves as hard as they could. I thought Yang was pretty anonymous. I didn't really notice Tomoki at right back. And, you got a bit of a mixed bag with Odin Home as well. You had some good with his link-up play. You had some bad in terms of his defensive coverage. Look, it was a typical preseason hit-out, just a very high-scoring one. Some positives, some negatives. But big ups to the B team kids. I thought a few of them showed quite a bit when they came on.
Yeah, that's the key thing for me. It's not about the result. We leaked a few goals or whatever, but you've got players out of position. So many guys were being played in different positions. You've got people getting an opportunity like Lawwell gets his first start in the midfield. The only time he's really seen him start for us in the past has been at centre back. So you're getting a look at him where he played last season and was one of the better players. What was he, League 2 down in England or League 1 last year? And he's one of the better players in the middle of the park there. So it's good to have a look at him in that situation. And then you have a look at the bench, and then, as you're saying, Shane, some of the young guys coming on and stepping up from the B team. It's good to see that they're starting to be that pathway through, even though it's only preseason. And at the end of the transfer window, I don't want to be seeing these guys playing. I wouldn't mind it if they were playing like on the bench, a couple of guys towards the end of the bench as like the last two guys there to get some attention, be part of the match day squad. But I don't really want to be seeing guys like, I've said it in the past, guys like Yang. I think he should be going out on loan. Guys, we need better quality, to use Brendan's words. Guys like Mikey, he should be sold. Realistically, O's gonna get sold if the rumors are true. And then you still got other guys to come back into the middle of the park and strengthen, like the guys who are waiting nationally. You've got AJ to come back in at right back. Hopefully we get a left back to come in. So there's a whole bunch of positions there. A goalkeeper, Bain should be our third stringer as far as I'm concerned. So there's a whole bunch of room for us to still strengthen. But at this point in time, it's still good to see guys getting minutes in the legs, having a few of the senior pros in the team like Matt O'Reilly and Kyogo in there, setting the standards for these young kids to look at. This is what we've got to get to. This is, if I want to be one of the best players in the Scottish Premier League in my position, these are the standards I need to hit. So those guys playing these games along with those young kids is actually going to be better for the young kids' development being around that now than just playing another whole season in the B team.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the one, probably the big takeaway. I mean, you can't really look at it and take a result away or the overall performance and read too much into it, because it is about getting, use a basketball term, about getting reps and getting minutes into the legs. But the Kyogo energy and the Kyogo setting the example, very early on in that game, they played the ball back to their keeper. He's pressing the keeper at 1,000,000 miles an hour. We're talking preseason friendly against Queen's Park. He doesn't need to do that, but he wants to do that. He wants to show people that this is what you have to do. And to have him on the park, and then you had Matt O'Reilly doing very similar, albeit in a more refined role. Those are the two big takeaways from me, is just the intent that those two were showing, whilst they had the youth players and even the fringe players around them say, you want to take that next step, you got to do this all the time, even if it's preseason. So yeah, absolute credit to them.
It's also the thing, you want to take my jersey or my teammate's jersey who was in the starting lineup at the end of the season. Come along. Here's the target. Come for it. Raise your game.
Yep.
So
absolutely.
RL77, even all, I'm later than a Celtic signing. Hey, nice.
I don't know about that. I think you're early. Actually, we haven't done anything yet.
So I'll go through some comments here, and then we'll get into, just got a few tangents to go off on here. So Andrew Galea was saying Kobayashi was pushing forward from the limited bits I saw. Robert Gibson comes through with, I wondered how long it would take into the episode. It was 7 minutes when Robert put this through. Palmer is a wanker, first of many this season, no doubt. Every week, you can guarantee you're going to get a Palmer is a wanker comment at some point from Robert. So it's good fun. But then to top it off, he goes, Kobayashi is to football what Mr. Miyagi is to karate. He just whacks off. There's a theme here between your last two posts there, Robert. Something about Palmer being a wanker and Kobayashi waxing off. And then Andrew saying Michael reckons Quan was better than Lawal. Mahesh is saying Quan looked more mobile and athletic than Lawal. And then Andrew saying the young ones will drop off now and the senior squad will go on tour. Absolutely. Robert Gibson saying Bain is a legend, only let 4 in. Andrew saying no sign of scales. And then I'm going to get to this one here from Martin, because I saw this, I was like, this is my thought process too as well. I want Taylor, Scales, McGregor, Kyogo, Palmer all to struggle to start due to new signings. In an ideal world, that's what it would be. And then and Bain, of course. And then Michael Ross was Kelly not even on the bench. Are we going to lose yet another promising academy player? We'll hold that one off till later in the pod. So I'll give Shane some thinking time. All right, so we'll do that. Michael, well played, sir. Yeah. So what we'll do, Shane, is we'll get into the next part here. So I want to get your thoughts on this. So do you think are we going to see Celtic going? Hang on, let me start again here. I just got tongue tied. Are Celtic going to be changing their approach to signing players? What do you think on that, Shane? Are we going to be trying to sign players to be ready to be first team starters, which then ties into what Martin said in the comments, which will push the last season starters into bench roles? Or do you think we're going to, I'm combining two things here, or do you think we're going to be getting a combination of project players and first team starters? What do you think we're going to be doing?
I think we're going to try and strike a balance, to be honest with you. I don't think we're going to go one way or completely one way or the other. I think it's going to be a mixture of trying to bring in a couple of first team starters in areas that we need, but then the other signings that we'll make, I think, are going to be more. Project players is such an interesting term. It tends to be one that people really pick up on, and depending on who you speak to, it can elicit some really intense kind of positive or negative feelings. But when we say project player, we're obviously talking about someone that's going to come in, develop underneath. As you love to say, that conveyor belt, you fit in underneath here. You've got someone in front of you. You work to take their spot. You develop under them. I think we'll never get to necessarily the state where we're just buying first-team regulars, at least not immediately. I think there's always going to be a little bit of balance as part of that. But what I was hoping for this time, and I don't necessarily know if we're going to do it, but what I was hoping for this time, with the fact that we've had Brendan back for that season, he has delivered on that title. We're back into Europe. We're in the new Champions League phase. There's a lot of optimism around this. I was hoping that would be the catalyst to look for some more first-team regulars in areas we need. And we're talking goalkeeper, we're talking left back, we're talking another striker. And I was hoping those three areas in particular, even middle of the park, if you want to throw that in there as well, would be areas that we actually looked at bringing first-teamers in. And then you'd basically say, right, we've got our goalkeeper, even a backup one. We've got our left back. Okay, Taylor, you go to the bench. We've got someone in front of you. And then even up front, okay, Kyogo, you've got to fight for your starting spot. I'm not sure, just based on what we've seen, if we're going to get there or not just yet. It's hard to tell, but that was my initial hope, is that is what would happen this window. And it remains to be seen whether we get there or not.
Okay, so for me, bloody, I had hiccups today and my voice is all over the joint. So I've been going through puberty for a second time here.
Okay, Jared.
Oh, hey, Shane sounds like a jockey.
No, I've got the right height.
You said it, not me, mate.
That's all right. I'm happy to zing myself.
There we go. So for me, I look at it, the way we structure it is what is a project player? You can have first team player. The backups to me should be the project player. And then we should have the youth players as the third string. So an ideal example would be, say our starting lineup in the midfield last season at the start was going to be Hatate, O'Reilly, McGregor, right? We bring in Bernardo. So last season, Bernardo should have been that project player. In the same way, Holmes should have been that project player. Guys backing up those three players. And then when one of them, if there's an injury to Hatate, then Bernardo steps up, and then backing him up, someone like Kelly comes up from the B team and sits on the bench. That's the way I view it, the way the whole structure should work. So the term project player for me is a little bit, where everyone gets mad about it, is kind of a little bit strange. But I think, there's certain positions back to the question I asked you, Shane, is there's going to be certain positions where we have to spend big on first team ready. Have to do that at goalkeeper. The problem for us is everyone knows we've got money in the bank. Everybody knows we need a goalkeeper. So the price goes up. You look at that Danish keeper we're being linked with out of Sparta Prague or whatever. There was talk at 4 million at the start. But what happens? Now we're being linked with him at 8 million. People know we need money and we're running out of time. So when that happens, the price goes up. The price keeps climbing. So you'd hope to do the business early, especially in positions like goalkeeper and left back, where we need to buy first team ready starting players, not for Scottish League football, but for Europe. They're the guys, that's where we need to spend the money. Then once those two are full, then we look at how we're going to tackle it. Scales was starting last season, but he should be that project player / backup player. So there should be another starting centre back. What's that going to be? Is that going to be someone that we bring in? Is it going to be someone on loan with an option to buy? Is it has to be someone Carter Vickers sort of level for Europe? Right back, we're good. And then you work your way through the squad like that. We need another winger. We need another striker. If O'Reilly moves on or Hatate, which we'll get to later in the pod, then there's going to be more changes. But at the end of the day, I think we definitely need first team ready starters at goalkeeper and left back. And then all the others depends on how we want to tackle it. Do we want to bring someone in to develop for a year like Bernardo did last year to then become a potential starter this year? So there's heaps of ways we can tackle. I think it's going to be a combination overall. Now, since we haven't signed replacements, this is going to be a bit of a weird tangent here. I've seen this reported in a few places, like on Twitter and, the random bloggers and that. So I've been talking about signing Adamita and Paolo Bernardo are going to be like big players for us and we must sign them, right? So realistically, I want to ask you, Shane, these guys, those two in particular, Ida and Bernardo, were regular players who would start games, would come off the bench, and they were in the first team in the second half of the season. So would signing those two and just getting the deals done, would that be seen as a positive to you? Because to me, the way I view it is if we haven't signed them now, we're weaker than we were at the end of last season because we haven't replaced those guys in our squad. So I'm seeing some people out there are going, okay, if we sign them, that's great. We spent some money. But that's just getting us to where we were at the end of last season. Is that how you see it, or do you see signing them as something a bit different? What's your thoughts?
No, you've hit the nail on the head. We're literally just getting back to where we were by signing them. I see their signings as an expected positive, which is it is positive to have them back on board and to retain them and have them back at the club for this season and beyond. But you're right. They're in a known quantity. We've already had them on loan. We know what they can deliver. We're starting to see what we can do in the future with them. So they're expected signings. I'm happy to have them on board, of course. But like yourself, I don't look at this and say, okay, there's our that's not really the start of our transfer activity as far as I'm concerned. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking to bring in new quality players that we haven't seen necessarily before and to take those starting spots. So yeah, I'm pretty much in agreement with yourself. This just brings us back to where we were. Good to get it done, good to have them on board, but don't see this as a way of saying, right, we've made a splash in the market. This should be seen as an expected level signings.
What Andrew's saying in the comments here is 10 million to get where we finished last season. And that's exactly what it is. If they're talking a 4 million for Bernardo plus a fair chunk of change on a salon and 6 million for Ida, that just gets us to where we were. But yeah, I must say the club will spin it and be like, oh yeah, we just spent 10 million. But the way I look at it and why I'm saying this, it's like after Ange's first season, where at the end of that season, we had money put aside already from sales of guys like Chris Iyer and the likes and Ryan Christie and all that sort of stuff, so that we could pay the 6 million for both Carter Vickers and Jota and turn them permanent. And we did that Like the Jota one took a bit of time, but the Carter Vickers one happened pretty quickly. But then those two signings, it was 12.4 million spent, and it got us to where we were. But then that second season was a launching off point for us. So I'm hoping we get, if we spend the 10 million, get those two players signed up, and then we can jump off and actually then go, all right, now we've got to spend another 8 million on a goalkeeper, spend another 5 million on a left back. That brings up to 23 million spent of a possible 30 million budget. But you'd hope that, you'd be able to pick up other players. And that's what I was saying before. It's going to be a combination of first team starters versus possible projects, guys that we can sign and develop for that, and how we're going to tackle it. So there's a whole way we can spend that. Say if we had a 30 million budget, there's plenty of ways we can spread that money out and get the job done. But yeah, I just think it's money being spent to be where we were at the end of the season. And I think I will look at the old Celtic Twitter, as I call it, and laugh at some people trying to spin it as it's a good thing. That those are big signs. We finally did some signings. So, because there's been no signings, this is another. I'm sitting at work and I'm like, having a bit of a think. I'm like, we're talking to the guy out in the foyer in the front section of our office who's a Tottenham fan. And I'm just like, he's talking about Ange and how proactive they've been. And I'm just like, I miss that. And then I started thinking, right, what is, as a supporter group, as a fan base, what is our biggest fear right now regarding recruitment? So this is what I want to know, and I want to get the comments going a little bit as well. So what is our biggest fear regarding recruitment? For me, I want to know if it is that we think the club is becoming complacent due to the impending Hun implosion that is possibly happening, or is it that we're just inactive? Because if you look at on Twitter, there's two camps. It's either we'll be right, mate, we'll get it done by the end of the window, and then you've got people panicking like Boys View, and then you've got Martin in the comments saying his biggest fear is still being left with Mikey Johnson. I agree with that. So, yeah, I just want to know, like, what's everyone's thoughts on what's the biggest fear at the moment in the window? Like, is it that we're complacent? Do you think the club's being complacent? Do you think it's just a lack of any signings? What is it? So let's go to you, Shane.
Well, the biggest fear, I think, which is what I have to a degree. I'll say that I'm not. There seem to be two kind of camps at the moment. There seems to be those who are, or maybe three camps. There's people who are just saying, as you were saying, she'll be right. We'll get it done by the end of the window. Don't worry. I'm in the next bracket, which is I'm not panicking, but I have some concerns. And I think a lot of people are in that particular bracket. And then you've got the more extreme elements of people who are really starting to panic early. And I don't think we're at panic stations just yet. Maybe come to me in 2 weeks' time if we haven't signed anybody. Probably a different answer. But I think I'm in that middle bracket, which is I think something will happen. I think it will eventuate. But we've been so burnt by the past couple of windows and our lack of action, and more crucially, our lack of making signings in areas that need improvement, that when we get to this point of the window and there hasn't really been any solid activity, it's kind of like that GTA 5 meme, or GTA 4 is like, oh shit, here we go again. And I think people are generally starting to get a little bit of that concern that we might get to the end of the window and we haven't improved in the areas that we all know we need to. I remain optimistic, but I think there's a little bit of a concern there by not having that early splash. That's all. And so you ask the question, is this due to complacency? Is this due to inactivity? I can't pinpoint it, but we all went through this whole process of the last season and watching Brendan deliver it after the trials and tribulations we sort of went through and thought, okay, they have to back him now. He's delivered. He's held up his end of the bargain. The board and the club have to come to the party and help him sign players that are going to take us to the next level. And if you talk to any Celtic fan, I'm going to include this in yourself in this, Jared. Our main focus for this upcoming season is sure, we want to win the league and we want to win everything we can domestically, but we want to have some sort of solid crack at Europe. We don't want to get to Europe and get knocked out very early or be shown to be out of our depth. We don't want that. And to do that, we need quality signings and we need to be active. And so, yeah, maybe it is a little bit of complacency. Who knows? But I'm in that middle bracket of I'm concerned, but still have a level of optimism.
I would honestly happily give up a domestic treble, not win either of the cups, win the league, and have a good run in Europe in the Champions League. I would happily, for me, that would be a more successful season than us winning another domestic treble, because we've been there, done that. We've all got the treble t-shirts. Let's be honest. So
yes, I do.
It's one of those things where I know it was such a rarity getting the treble, but I don't think that even if the Huns won both the cups, it's not going to give them the money that they need guaranteed in Europe. So it's irrelevant. I would happily see us win the league and get after it in Europe and get past the first round of the knockouts in the new year. That, and see some progression in Europe. We go into a bigger Champions League where we play in, what is that, pot D teams. We'll be in the third pot. So there'll be two teams worse than us that we've got to play, another one from in our one, and then there's four above us. So realistically, we should actually get more points than normal in Europe. There's no excuses for it. So
yeah, and I think just on that point, just about the Europe and League thing, and this doesn't always guarantee success, but if you structure your team with an eye to making progress in Europe, so getting a team that's at that level to challenge in Europe or at least make strides in Europe, the chances of that success then flowing down to domestic level is much higher and much greater than setting your team up to win domestically and then have a crack at Europe, right? So we should be looking at going, let's strengthen our team, let's get some European quality in there, and then that should then, with the best of intentions, flow down into success at domestic level. Not guaranteed, of course, but that's a better chance and a better opportunity of happening than saying, well, we're going to build the best domestic team so we can win all trophies in Scotland and then hope that they have a good run in Europe.
It's probably the nicest thing I'm ever going to say about Rangers, but when they did that for their run to the Europa League final that they lost, by the way, in case anyone's lurking in the comments, but when they did that and they built their team for Europe, yeah, they didn't get the job done in that final. They didn't get the job done domestically here either. But that is the sort of thing where they built their team for Europe, not for the league. And that's what's come back to hurt them last year in the league, because we had a team full of footballers. They had a team full of hammer throwers that they were trying to play long ball football to in Europe. And then when they came back to Scotland, it didn't work for them. So there's give and takes. Like, it worked for them a few years before that, but it didn't work from last year. So it's one of them sort of situations where, are you cutting your nose off to spite your face, basically, depending on how you build your team. I want us to build our team for Europe and have a crack at that, because we've done it the other way for so long and we haven't got the result. What's the harm here in trying the other way?
Yep.
So I'm going to bring up some comments because it's time. There's some absolute doozies sitting here. So, yeah, I'm just going to bring a few up for you. So Martin was saying, when we're talking about Champions League players and building a team for Europe, for Champions League, I think we need Kalmack to agree to a superstar to break his wages, number 10 or a centre forward to carry the team in Europe. What do you think of that, Shane?
Well, if you're going down, I think it's a fair question. I think if you're going down that path, I'd be looking at probably a number 10, to be honest, particularly if we lose O'Reilly. Like, that's going to be a no-brainer. But yeah, I think it's a fair question. We need, when you get to that level, you need quality players either leading the line or creating just behind those. I tend to lean on more of the 10 is what we need. And a lot of that is because I think that probably O'Reilly will make a move this window. And so we're going to really lack quality in that area.
I actually don't think it's going to be O'Reilly in the midfield who goes. all things considered.
Really?
I was talking to some Danish people today, and yeah, I don't know. They're not in the know people, but talking to them and talking about like the Danish mindset and everything, they tend to always have very structured plan. And I can jump ahead to this topic quickly, and then we'll come back to the comments. But so what I was going to ask you later on, Shane, was do you think we'll have any major departures in the coming weeks? So there've been rumours of Leicester City being linked with Matt O'Reilly. And Rio Hatade has apparently said in Japanese media he wouldn't mind playing in the EPL, La Liga, or Serie A. So with that question there, what I was referring to is I actually think this is the second year in a row Hatade said it. He's fit. If you've seen the picture of him in training, he looks like he's freezing. I actually think we'll lose Hatade before we lose O'Reilly, because O'Reilly is like at the cream of the crop sort of player. He's going to go to a big club. He's not going to go to, say, an Everton or a Leicester City. He's going to go to an Atletico Madrid or a Milan he's going to that tier or a top 6 English club, right? Hatade has also been linked with Tottenham and rejoining with Ange. So realistically, I could see Hatade moving on because O'Reilly would have, like when he came up, he said his plan was to go from MK Dons to Celtic and be here for a bunch of years and develop before his next move. So I don't think he's going to jump at the first offer, which will be, say, if a Brighton reached out, that's probably the lowest level EPL club I could see him going to. I can't see him going to a Southampton or a Leicester City, that sort of rung down the bottom there. So I think he would probably look at it and be, all right, if I'm not going to get that move now, I can go and play 8 games in the Champions League, put myself in the shop window there, get some more experience, and make my move in January. So if we're going to lose someone now midfield wise, yeah, it'd probably be Hatade. Back to that, what we were saying there, not O'Reilly. Don't know if you thought of that, Shane, or not.
No, I'd seen the rumours. The Tottenham stuff's interesting. I don't know Tottenham that well, to be quite honest, but I'm just not sure what role he kind of plays if he goes to Tottenham. Is he at that level where he's just sort of going to be on the bench and come on, or can he potentially challenge for a starting spot? I'm talking a little bit out of turn here in terms of that squad, so I don't really know. But I've just been the rumours with Matt, and maybe I haven't seen him as much lately, but just with the rumours and the money being sort of thrown about, it just seemed like it was a fait accompli. It was going to happen, that eventually someone was going to ask and it was going to start to move. So that's the one I've been sort of not looking forward to, quite the opposite, dreading, but almost expecting. But look, if he's, the way he played in that preseason game, against Queen's Park last night, that was someone digging in, looking to play. He definitely wasn't phoning it in by any stretch. So maybe I need to look into that a bit more as a positive and say that he's staying. I think my only concern with O'Reilly staying, just getting back to the transfer stuff, is whether there's any spin on keeping O'Reilly as potentially being a massive part of, I guess, the transfer market in terms of keeping him, and whether that's spun as a massive sort of success because we've held on to him instead of selling him. Which I wouldn't look at necessarily. I'd say it's a success, but then I wouldn't look at it and say, well, that's no excuse to go and not sign some other players in other areas. But I've just been expecting it to kind of happen, dreading it, as I said. So, yeah, if he stays, I'd be more than happy. Might even get his name and number on my shirt if McCarthy goes.
So Michael Ross is saying Hatade is not good enough for Spurs. They definitely need another midfielder. So he wouldn't be the starter every week, but he would be good enough to play for them. As Andrew's saying here, if anyone weighs money at our board, anyone's up for grabs. And then RL77, O'Reilly will stay for Champions League unless seriously big team come in for him. Yep. Michael Ross was saying, I'd imagine this will be our last appearance in the Champions League for a few years, as next year it's not automatic qualification. So there we go. Let's get a run into it this year. Mahesh, we are saying I'm more worried about Ange coming after Kyogo. Ange has a problem with Spurs' forward line with Richarlison's movement and pressing nowhere near the levels. Kyogo would fix that problem. You're saying that, but the talk with all the Spurs people that I know and their podcasts and that, there's 2 Celtic players they're looking at, and Kyogo isn't one of them. The ones they're talking about is Hatate to fix the midfield problem and Maeda to fix their pressing problem. That's the other one that they're talking about. They're not really looking at Kyogo from what I'm hearing. And as Mike was saying, Kyogo's shoulder may put Ange off, and that's part of it as well. And the other option is Vinny's saying Tottenham are after Eze and rumours are on Ivan Toney. So that's the other thing why it's not really Kyogo. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. But we'll get back to the comments here. Andrew Galea, just signed Matt Ryan, always a starting keeper, 32 years old, a born leader. The more and more you say this, the eventually I'm going to join you. I'm going to be like, yep, just get it done. Always when I play FIFA, I'd sign him back in the day, so why not? Could do a lot worse. Shane,
Look,
your
he's a
thoughts?
free agent. Yeah, he's on a free at the moment. He's left Alkmaar after that season finished. He's available to be signed. He's 32. He's still a quality keeper. Had a decent season in the Eredivisie. So when I was looking online the other day, the rumours are that he's basically off to sign a contract at Derby County. So I would have loved to have thought we'd be in the market for him and at least tempting him. I'm not sure whether we'd sign him necessarily as the first choice or whether he'd be someone that would sit on the bench, particularly if some other names that have been mentioned. But he's definitely a quality individual to have around the squad and very reliable in that role when needed. So I'd love to see him at Celtic. Unfortunately, there aren't many Australian players available, particularly on a free at the moment, that you'd see Celtic signing. So it'd be good to get an Aussie back in the first teams. We've got Liam Bonnetig in the B team, and I'm sure he's progressing well. But it'd be great to see another Australian in the Celtic first team again.
Yeah, definitely would be because, the old Tilio Tiara had to come out again last week. So, yeah, we'll just grab a couple more of the comments here. So, what do we got here? So, Mahesh was saying early on, we're talking about the B team players. If Barca can have 4 or 5 players from their youth program in the matchday squads, so can Celtic. A total waste of time having a B team if Celtic can buy in projects from outside. On that front, I said it last week, the Rocco Varda situation with bringing in someone like Yang, 100% agree with that. The issue is, I don't think we have the same level of production there that Barca has, quite obviously. And then we've got this other one from Mahesh here saying Celtic need to follow the Ajax model and promote from within the B team, even if it means losing the league once every 3 years. Celtic B team was competitive in the Youth Champions League, so the talent's there. Shane, what's your thought on that?
Oh, look, I'd love to see more B team talent make the matchday squad and even actually play more frequently. I think we're all a little bit burnt by seeing a couple of players who we would hope would make a bit of a splash eventually in the first team squad actually leaving the club, and obviously Varda being the latest, and then the rumours about Daniel Kelly, which I think you wanted to chat about later. We want to see those players progress into some sort of role. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. Varta missing out and not getting that opportunity was really frustrating, because I think he was more than at the level and more than warranted a chance there. But I also share your concerns about the quality of the B League, and particularly the quality of opposition they're playing with and the development because of that. And, you look at a couple of these players and where they've gone to other places where they're not going to be first team starters, but the development underneath is more akin to testing them and training this and building their skills up. Where, with the B team, no disrespect to the Lowland League, but we're stuck there and we're not really playing that kind of high level talent. So it's hard to really get a gauge of how they're progressing. I'm not really sure. I don't know the Ajax model in particular. I don't know if they've got a similar thing to like the German clubs where they've got a reserve team that's in, the league below the Eredivisie or anything like that. Maybe you might know that instead, Jared. But I think we're impacted a little bit by the quality of opposition that we're maybe not necessarily coming up against, that sees the development a bit, a bit stretched. And you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, a little bit. You want to see these players come in, but then if they come in and they're not ready, people are like, why are you overexposing them? So, look, I'd love to see more. And Daniel Kelly's a good example of a player I'd love to see on the fringes and getting more minutes this season if we keep him around, because we don't want to lose someone of his quality.
It's got the case of the Ben Dokes, the way I look at it, where Doak came in, played a bunch, looked like a player. He should be starting for us on the wing this season, but he's down at Liverpool doing his thing. And you've got Kelly there floating about. He's got enough talent, and you've got Bayer Leverkusen in for him. So, all things considered, what's going on here? If you got clubs of that standard looking at these players, then there's clearly a breakdown in the situation. There's definitely talent, as you said. So, yeah, it's a bit of a frustrating one.
That's a really good point, because there's obviously a bit of commentary online about clubs coming in for these players, and then people, sort of going, well, they're not really at our quality. They're not pushing into our first team, so let them go. But as you articulated, we've got Liverpool, we've got Bayer Leverkusen, who've just won the Bundesliga. We've got big clubs coming in for these youth prospects, right? And they can go other places as well. They clearly see some talent there. So, are we holding ourselves back by not overexposing them? It's a tough question to answer. And as I said, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. But me personally, I think we've had a lot of youth team prospects go places where it would have been better to keep them and start to integrate them. And then you might see the project player situation differ a little bit. We might not go after so many players necessarily like a Yang or so forth, because, hey, Varda's made strides. Now he's on the bench. Now he's pushing into that, conveyor belt, pushing up to be the starter kind of thing. So, yeah, I tend to favour that, and I think everyone gets excited when they've had a youth prospect come through the academy who's been at Celtic for a while, actually see them make the first team. A lot of people take an interest in our B team. They tell us online of the quality they've seen, and they get a bit of an extra kick when they make the first team and show their quality. So, yeah, I'd love to see that more.
100%. So the way I look at it is our B team is playing at too low of a level. Okay, so playing in the Lowland Leagues, not good enough. We played against a Scottish Championship club with a lot of B team players playing against Queen's Park. They held their own, the majority of them. So that shows the standard that our B team players are. So instead of them getting 30, 40, 50 games down in the Lowland League, realistically, if you look at the German model and the Dutch model, it's their B teams can play in not the level below, but the one beneath that. So there has to be a league difference. So that will be the equivalent of our B team playing in League One. But then in Spain, they have the model where they can play to the league below, which means our team would be playing in the championship. Now, either of those options would get better reps and better quality football into our players playing against grown men, higher standard. They can be promoted and relegated, so they're getting that every game has meaning, and the players will develop in that environment. Now, Andrew said here that we're missing the reserve team football where the young ones can play alongside senior pros, and that's exactly it. Mahesh's comment before that was the only way we find out how good some of these kids are is to play them in the first team and take our medicine. I think that's at a certain point, but if we had our B team playing in the championship or in League One, it's not a 5-league difference. It's 1 or 2, and you get to see them playing against the standard that they played against. And yeah, that's where the problem is. And Michael Ross, scrapping the reserve league has been a disaster for Scottish football, 100%. So yeah, it's just a bit of an interesting one. So I'm going to bring up a couple of other things, talking about the board complacency and stuff before, or if we're complacent or whatever. Vinny was saying the board are definitely complacent because if we qualify for Europe every year, more Champions League and Europa League games means more money. And then there was another comment, more points need money as well. And Robert's saying with our current squad, with the current squad, we're due another porn star level pumping. If we don't strengthen it, 100%.
Well, just on the Europe thing and Vinny's comment, and I think someone else made mention of it before. I'm pretty sure, unless I'm mistaken, unless something dramatic happens, that this might be the last time for a little while that we automatically qualify. I think I've
Yeah.
read somewhere or we've talked about the coefficient going to a point where we'd need to go through a playoff again. So this is kind of our last automatic crack at it. Then we're going to have to go through sort of the phases we've been before. So it makes sense to strengthen now and have a really good, opportunity at doing something in Europe this season. And then, if you want to use that quality to then build to get through qualifying it for the next season.
Well, the problem with the coefficient, Shane, is it's a 5-year window. So what points drop off our coefficient at the end of this season? Our Europa League under Lenny,
Yeah.
where that drops off. What drops off the following season? The Rangers run to the Europa League final off the Scottish efficient one. So then suddenly our coefficient goes from us being the 10th club down to like the 11th or 12th next season, such as a playoff. And then the following season, unless one of us has a big run this year, we drop down further again to like 13th or 14th, where it's automatically into the Europa League. So straight away, it shows how bad it is. So there you go. The Czech teams are taking our place. Andrew's put that in the comments. So yeah, we've got comment here from Peg Leg was saying our structure's a tin pot, jobs for the boys and sons, no experienced head of recruitment brought in because it would undermine Lawwell's control. Can't have anyone coming in with new ideas. And on top of that, I was trying to find the comment that we saw here, RL77. Look at the coaches we bring in for youth and B team. They may have the badges for it and everything, but you're trying to tell me that Johnny Hayes is best in class that we could get for that position? I don't know. I just find it odd. And Steve McManus and all that. So, yeah, we'll there's a lot to think about on all that front, but I think what we'll do, Shane, is we'll crack on to the last topic I wanted to discuss here because I've changed up the order of the run sheet. So we discussed early on in the episode that we still need plenty of reinforcements in the squad as Brendan overhauls it. So we touched on we need a starting goalkeeper, we need a left back, and then winger, centre back, 10 or a striker. There goes 5 or 6 positions we need to strengthen. So what are you expecting to happen before our USA preseason tour commences? Now, Stephen Kennedy is saying, surely there'll be a few signings announced before we head to the US. For me, I think those signings, there'll be at least 2, but they're going to be the guys that we touched on earlier. It'll be Ida, it'll be Bernardo, which is just going to get us back to where we were at the end of the season. And the club will try and spin it, we've got some signings in, but it's not in the positions and it's not strengthening the squad. It's just getting us to where we were. So what are you hoping to see or think will happen before we go to the US?
I agree with you that Ida and Bernardo, I think, will be done before we head off to the US. So they'll be part of the squad that goes over for those preseason friendlies. But I'm also expecting a goalkeeper to be signed as well. I think we'll actually have a goalkeeper signed and ready to go for that trip. So I'm not sure who just yet. I'm not sure if it's going to be that chap from Sparta Prague or, fingers crossed, whether it be Matty Ryan, who knows. But I think we'll definitely have a goalkeeper as well. And so on that basis, I'm expecting at least 3. So goalkeeper, Bernardo, Ida, and they'll make the trip with the squad to the US.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much what it's going to be as well. Michael Rossi, I missed your comment earlier. I saw it, but this one here, Zerdan Shaqiri signed him as a Lubo type signing. Look, the form he's been in and everything, he could be, I think he's a Brendan type of player. Get him out there on the wing, could do the job for us. I don't like him. I think his career's kind of been funny. Like if you look at his, I'm going to just get up on Wikipedia or whatever quickly. So Shane, give us your thoughts on the Shaqiri possibility while I look something up on it.
I don't mind it. He's been in good form. He's in the MLS at the moment. So it'd be interesting to see if we could pry him away from there. I don't know what his wages would be, but obviously, not in a top European league that I think he'd want to then not deviate away from to go to Scotland. So definitely one I'd look at. But Yeah, interested, but not too fast if it didn't happen either.
Okay, so my point that I wanted to look up, if your career went like this, Chicago Fire to Lyon to Liverpool to Inter Milan to Bayern Munich, you'd be like, that is a great career progression, step by step by step by step by step, right? That's his career the other way.
I knew where that was going.
So he's gone from FC Basel to Bayern Munich to Inter Milan to Stoke City to Liverpool to Lyon and then to Chicago. So that's the thing I find weird. It's just like as he gets older, he's just like, I'll just drop a level, keep up so I look like a good player and I get paid the most money. Because I know he's on big money. He's one of the top earners in the he's in the top 10 or 20 earners in the MLS. So he's on some big.
Well, then there went no chance to pry him away. Then come on,
yeah, no chance we'll be able to afford that. But yeah, for me, definitely need to bring in the goalkeeper, and we'll have Bernardo and Ida before we go to the US, and then I think while we're over there, we might, we're in the same area as Man City. We'll probably just have old mate Pedro just knocking on the door at the Man City, going, "Hello, come on, send us some more players on that pipeline again that you used to always do. Your Paddy Roberts, your Chams, your whatever, your Frimpongs, who you got there that can come to us and fill, buy me some time so I can keep my heater driveway on."
Look, the other thing that we should look at while we're over there, obviously, if we get the opportunity, are MLS players. We're obviously talking about Shaqiri, but the MLS itself as a league is definitely a lot better than I remember it previously. Now, it is a little bit, it's not really a retirement league. That's probably a little bit unfair. It does get a lot of quality players on big coin go over there to kind of wrap up their careers. But they've got some decent young talent over there. And it's an area that isn't really overly well tapped in Europe when you think about it. So if we're looking to get some quality players or quality individuals, but have a little bit of an edge, well, the MLS isn't the worst place to go. Think of Alistair Johnston, right? So that it's not without realms of looking at that and going, well, maybe we can get someone from here and maybe bring them across. And then we've got something that maybe others don't necessarily know about. And it's a market, as I said, that isn't being heavily tapped.
Yeah, it's the MLS, it used to be a absolutely hideous league, but now it's got to the point in the last 3, 4, 5 years where the league's got bigger, and you're starting to see a lot of those players the Central American players, like your Costa Ricans and your Hondurans and all that sort of stuff, that would used to go down into and play in like Argentina and Brazil and all that, they're now going to the MLS. So what you're seeing is a lot of not just the standard of American players and Canadian players improving, but you're also seeing the Mexican players and those other players stepping up and in. So you're going to have those big name players, but then a club like Atlanta, for instance, you look at them and they've got a lot of Hondurans and Costa Ricans and Mexicans there, and some of the most technical and better players in the league. So there's a lot of talent there. You could probably go over there. Look at a club like Austin FC, for instance. They've got a great top. If you look at it, the old Nakamura green and black striped top, something like that. Set up a partnership with them if you can, and try and get some players out of America over, because Johnston's done the job. So why not?
Yeah, well, and then even then, and we'll give him a quick shout out. Obviously, he's had a tremendous run as part of the Copa America and the Canadian squad, who made the semi-final. Unfortunately, lost to Argentina. No shame in that, but they did a tremendous job getting that far, and Alistair Johnston was a big part of that, and was a very solid role player in the progression they made, and so Canadian football's on the rise. Maybe that's an area we should look at as well.
Sounds like a point. So why not? While we're over there, have a look, sign some players up. You can't go wrong. So I think we'll start to wrap the pod up there, Shane. So thanks for jumping on, having a chat. It's been good to go off on a few tangents in the off season on the old Chinwag. So last thing I want to do, I mentioned it last week. Gary Ogg's coming out on tour of Australia and New Zealand later in the year, in October, November. I've been in talks with the promoters, Troubadour Presents, so we're going to be getting some tickets to do a giveaway later on, and going to get Gary on for an interview and all that sort of stuff. So what we're going to do is, if you're looking for tickets, go to troubadourpresents.com. You can search Gary Ogg there, and the tickets are all that are available on there. So just the link for that's in the show notes as well. So just wanted to share that with you all. Got a final thought, Shane, because I stole it early on when we spoke a bit of AFL before.
It's a rare one. You actually stole one from me, and it feels nice. Normally, I steal one from you. I've done that on countless occasions. But yeah, look, Olympics are coming up, which is of interest to me. So we've got the Matildas, of course, who are a part of the Olympics. The Olyroos didn't make it, which is the Australian under-23s football team, but oh well. But for me, a big focus this time is on basketball. So the Boomers and the Opals. Particularly on the Boomers, who I have a very deep love for. Really excited to see how they go in Paris, and seeing if somehow they could get another medal, which would be a tremendous shot in the arm for basketball in this country. So looking forward to it, but up the Boomers, up the Opals, and of course up the Matildas.
Sounds good. And for me, I'm just going to put something up to my camera here. That's what all our referees need written on their yellow cards going into the season ahead. Have a good one, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Hail, hail.
Hail, hail.